This is skill 1.3, and in this skill, we're going to start talking about some geometry postulates. So this one is titled Beginning Geometry Postulates 1. So the first thing we need to talk about is what is a postulate? It's a word that's going to come up from time to time in geometry class this year, and it's a really simple idea. It's just a statement that we assume to be true. A statement we assume to be true. So it's something that somebody at some point figured out. There's maybe not a whole lot of proof that goes along with it, but we just assume that it's going to work and that it's going to be true. So one of the postulates that we have in this class is called the ruler postulate, and it's like the simplest thing ever. Basically, all it says is that a ruler works. Like you can use a ruler to measure something. So we get a little bit more technical in the definitions here. One definition or one thing I want you to write down is that every point on a line can be paired with a real number. Every point on a line can be paired with a real number. Use a little shorthand like that, okay? So what I mean by that is you could put a point like right here, we could call it A, and that A is paired with the real number 1. And we could put another point maybe right here, and we could call it B, and that point B could be paired with that real number 4. Now it could go anywhere. It could be 3 1/8 and 3 1/4 or 5 7/9. You know, it doesn't have to be on a whole number, but every point can be placed on a real number. Now, with that said, we could find the distance between those 2 points, or we could find the length of that line segment that we just created. And there's a couple ways that we could do it. We could count. We could just go 1, 2, 3. So the length is 3. I don't know what this is in inches, centimeters. Let's call it inches, just so we're all talking about the same thing. So we could say that the distance between points A and B is 3 inches. That's one way to do it. Or we could do a little math. We could do it this way. We could do 4 minus 1, which is 3. So this point minus this point. Or we could go the other way around. We could go 1 minus 4, but wait a second, that's -3. And a distance can never be -3. So what we actually have to do is we have to put absolute value bars around that. Now 1 minus 4 is -3, and the absolute value of -3 is 3. So I don't know how familiar you are with absolute value, when the last time you talked about it is, but in its simplest terms, it's just the distance, the length. And length can never be negative. So it basically takes whatever you have inside of those absolute value bars, and makes it into a positive number. Okay. And I don't think I'm really going to write that down and define that. I'm just going to have you remember here that these are absolute value. All right, that's the ruler postulate. Okay. Now that leads us into a little notation tidbit. Okay. If we see AB with no line over it, that is talking about a length. So if you see this, this is a length. Okay, it's the distance between A and B. Your answer is always going to be a number. Okay, so maybe we have A to B, and it's 6 centimeters. Okay, if I asked you what AB equals, you would say 6. It's a number, or 6 centimeters to be more exact. Okay, if you see AB with that segment bar over it, if you see this, that is actually talking about a picture or a diagram. It's talking about the actual physical line segment, okay? So if I asked you for AB, you would not answer with that segment bar over it. You would not say 6 centimeters. You would actually show me a picture. You would show me this, okay? So that's the difference. No bar on top, you're answering with a number. Bar on top, you're actually answering with a picture, okay? Protractor postulate. Now do your best to sketch this in your notebook. You don't have to put on every single angle measurement, but draw yourself a little protractor there, a little semicircle. And we are just going to define what the protractor postulate is. It basically says that a protractor works. So it says that every angle we encounter is between 0 degrees and 180 degrees. Okay, now once you get up into some upper level classes, you're going to see some references of negative angles and angles that are like 270 degrees and things like that. But in our world, in our geometry world, all of our angles are going to be somewhere on that protractor. Okay, and I don't know, again, when the last time you used a protractor is, but I am going to attempt to draw on this. How you're going to work it is you're going to start with one part of your angle. So one of your rays is going to be going horizontally, and then the other one is going to be going at some type of angle, maybe something like that. And then you're going to read where that angle goes through your protractor here. So here's our, oops, actually, I'm going to move this down a little bit like that. Okay, so let's give it a name. Let's call it angle X, Y, Z. Put a point out here and a point up here. And what would the measure of that angle be? Well, we're going to look on the inside. We're going to look at these inside numbers. Ignore these ones on the outside here. We're not going to use those ones. We're going to use this inside bar here. And it looks like it's 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 degrees right there. So you would say the measure of angle X, Y, Z is equal to 50 degrees. Okay, so for your notes, this is the first time we've really talked about this. That little M outside of the angle sign, that means the measure of. So lots of notation type stuff to remember in this first unit. All right, so you can see if you keep reading this inside bar, going kind of counterclockwise here, we go all the way from 0 to 180 degrees. And all of our angles are going to wind up somewhere within there, okay? Now, back to this notation stuff, I kind of just talked about it, but if you see just angle ABC written like this, we are actually talking about the picture or the diagram. And if you see this M in front of it, that means the measure of that angle. Okay, so without the M in front, you are drawing something. You are drawing angle ABC. Okay, if you see that M in front, you're answering with a number. So maybe it is 120 degrees. I don't know. I don't have an actual angle in front of me. Maybe I could draw one that's about 180 or 120, I should say. 120 degrees. Okay, so you are actually answering with a number in that case, and we'll work on that. So in summary for this one, I think the big things are notation. I think you guys all know what a ruler and a protractor are, but I think the more important things we talked about in this lesson were the notation things. So when you're writing about a length of a segment, do not put a bar on top. You would just use 2 letters. Anytime you're talking about a length, a distance, we're not putting a bar on top of the 2 letters. And then when you're writing about the measure of an angle, put an M in front. So for example, measure of angle XYZ. Again, it's really important. I know some of this stuff might seem kind of stupid that we have to do this, but the better we get at it now, the easier things will go as we go throughout this class, because we'll all be speaking the same language. When we're doing things together, we'll all be doing it consistently. So make sure that you put in some effort here in making things very clear and very precise. So go ahead and grab your practice for 1.3.